Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 32, Text 43. Yo idam shinuyad amba shadaya purusha sakrit ya vabhidate machchito so hi eti padavim chame ya idam shinuyadamba ya idam shinuyadamba shadaya purushasakrit shadaya purushasakrit yo vabhidate machchitta yo vabhidate machchitta sahyeti padavim chame sahyeti padavim chaye. Do you know how to use that? Weißt du, wie dieser Übersetzungssystem läuft? Nein? Das ist der Schweizer. Ya idam shinuyaramba shadaya purushasakrit yo vabhidate machchitta sahyeti padavim chame. He knows it? Chanting.
Yaidam Srinuyadamba Yaidam Srinuyadamba Radaya Purushasakrit Radaya Purushasakrit Yovabhidate Machchitta Yovabhidate Machchitta Sayeti Padavimchame Sayeti Padavimchame Yaidam Srinuyadamba Yaidam Srinuyadamba Radaya Purushasakrit Radaya Purushasakrit Yovabhidate Yovabhidate machchita Sayeti padavimchame.
Yoho, he who, idam, this, shinuyat, may hear, amba, O mother, shadaya, with faith, purusha, a person, sakrit, once, Yoho, he who, va, or, abhidate, repeats, machchitta, his mind fixed on me. So, he, certainly, eti, attains, padavim, abode, cha, and, may, my. Translation. Anyone who once meditates upon me with faith and affection, who hears and chants about me, surely goes back home, back to Godhead. No purport. Text 1, chapter 33. Maitre uvacho evam nishamya kapilasya vacho janitri sakardamasya daita kila devahuti visrasta moha patalatam abhipranamya tushtava tattva vishayankita siddhi bhumin. Shri Maitreya said, thus Devahuti, the mother of Lord Kapila and wife of Kadama Muni, became freed from all ignorance concerning devotional service and transcendental knowledge. She offered her obeisances unto the Lord, the author of the basic principles of the Sankhya system of philosophy, which is the background of liberation, and she satisfied him with the following verses of prayer. Purport. The system of philosophy enunciated by Lord Kapila before his mother is the background for situation on the spiritual platform. The special significance of this system of philosophy is stated herein as Siddhi Bhumin, It is the background of salvation. People who are suffering in this material world, you're hearing something? People who are suffering in this material world because they are conditioned by the material energy, can easily get freedom from the clutches of matter by understanding the Sankhya philosophy enunciated by Lord Kapila. By this system of philosophy, one can immediately become freed, even though one is situated in this material world. That stage is called Jivan Mukti. This means that one is liberated even though one stays with this material body. That happened for Devahuti, the mother of Lord Kapila, and she became therefore satisfied the Lord by offering her prayers. Anyone who understands the basic principle of Sankhya philosophy is elevated in devotional service and becomes fully Krishna conscious or liberated, even in this material world. Yaidam shunyadamba shadaya purushasakrit yova bidatte machchitam sahyeti padavim chame. Anyone who once meditates upon me with faith and affection, who hears and chants about me, surely goes home back to Godhead. Maichevache vamnishamya kapilasya vacho janitri sakardamasya daita kila devahuti visrastamoha patalatam abdi pranamya tishtava tattva vishankita siddhibhumi. Shimaicheya said, thus Devahuti, the mother of Lord Kapila and wife of Kardama Muni, became freed from all ignorance concerning devotional service and transcendental knowledge. She offered her obeisances unto the Lord, the author of the basic principles of the Sankhya system of philosophy, which is the background of liberation, and she satisfied him with the following verses of prayer. So this meditation upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead is something which Krishna has also described in the Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhavamad bhakto majjimam namaskuru manmana. The mind must be concentrated upon Krishna. Mam hi patamana mam hi no. Mam hi. Oh my goodness. No, I forgot it. Manakparta yogam yunjam madashaya asamshayam samagram mam yatad yatsasi tachtrinu. That Krishna says that in the 7th chapter, in the beginning, he begins to explain about how one may attain asamshayam samagram mam, a full understanding of Krishna, without a doubt. Asamshayam, samshaya refers to the doubts. Asamshayam means without any doubt. Samagram means completely. Mam, meaning you can completely understand Krishna, or being completely without any doubts about Krishna, when the mind is concentrated on the Supreme. And that one should hear that from Krishna himself. Yata gyasasi tachrinu. Just hear that from me. Krishna is saying, I'm going to speak it to you, now you listen. And you get knowledge about the existence from me. Therefore, although Kapila Deva is speaking here, that anyone who is chanting about Krishna, meditating on him, hearing about him, with faith and affection, of course that shraddhaya is very important. It must be done with faith and affection, but how done? From a proper authority. Therefore, in the previous verses, Kapila Deva is speaking about how this instruction should be imparted by a bona fide spiritual master. And then it will be realized by the faithful disciple. A faithful disciple is he who is just interested in hearing properly from the spiritual master and repeating what he has realized. It is not that to be bona fide, you must simply repeat the words exactly of the spiritual master. as in memorization. Parrot memorization does not help much. After all, if you grab the parrot by the throat, all of his sweet talk that he may have spoken before is finished, and he's just squawking. Similarly, we will not be benefited at the time of death by simply having memorized a lot of things and being able to repeat them. One must realize, and this realization comes when one is actually situated on the platform of devotional service. In other words, if you're serving, you can realize knowledge. If you're not serving, you can't. The proof is the many professors who learn Vedic literatures by the Sanskrit, just wanting to understand the Sanskrit for the sake of linguistic comparison or something like that. So their idea is just get knowledge. Don't worry about surrendering. But the problem is that unless you have devotional service, you can't get knowledge, not realize knowledge. It doesn't come. So, therefore, realized knowledge is attained by those who have engaged in Krishna's service. And when one has engaged in Krishna's service, then he can realize. But in order to do that, one must have heard properly. And when he has realized, then he may repeat according to his realization. It's like the sages requested Sutta Goswami to repeat what he has heard from Shukadev Goswami according to his own realization. Which means we don't want just a tape recorder to replay it. We want you who know what is best for us. In other words, they were telling to Sutta Goswami, you know us who are now sitting here before you. We are here at Naimisharanya, and you are our superior. So obviously from this statement, when they say, just repeat what you think is good for us, you just repeat that for us, according to your realization. So obviously Sutta Goswami was in the superior position. And they said, just whatever you think is best for us. That means they were depending on him to give them that information which they could understand. Therefore also, we do not get involved in various very technical matters on the process of auxiliary yogas, which may be helpful aspects of devotional service, because nobody understands them, in fact. Maybe somebody can understand something about yoga for bodily exercise, good health. More than that, nobody understands. Therefore, these things are not taken up nowadays. Formerly, nobody did yoga just for good health. They would be amazed if nowadays, if some persons from the former ages saw what the modern man thinks of yoga, they would be laughing. Because you can also do the same thing with other forms of exercise. Prabhupada always made it a point to point out that, yes, whenever somebody would ask about yoga being good for health, Prabhupada would say, yes, you can also do these, what do you call them? Jumping jacks? The point is that for bodily exercise, there are so many forms of exercise. He also mentioned these push-ups. So it is exercise. And simply exercise, whether it be better exercise or worse exercise, there are also nowadays some very scientifically minded people who have developed all kinds of exercise. Just like one of the most famous exercises in the yoga practice, this Surya Namaskar was just developed by some king who used his brain and figured out how you can move around and not harm the body. And now everybody thinks it's such intense yoga. And these things are simply bodily exercise. But the point of the yoga is to bring one's mind in connection with the Supreme. And that you cannot get by these present methods. You can only get that by concentrating the mind on the Supreme through the bona fide practices. Bona fide practices must be there. What are those bona fide practices? They are that some system which is given by the Supreme, one follows it, utilizing the mind and his intelligence and surrendering to the Supreme. That is bona fide practice. For instance, as it's stated in the next verse, Devahuti heard from Kapila Dev. Although she was his mother, she heard anyway. Being the mother, you don't want to hear from the son much. After all, mother is one who tells the son what to do. But Devahuti knew, my son, no ordinary son. He is incarnation of the Lord himself. Therefore, what he says, I listened. And he gave the Sankhya philosophy very perfectly to Devahuti. And she accepted it because she had the proper authority. And thus she became freed from ignorance. And that is her whole secret. The Sankhya philosophy. Now Prabhupada says here in the translation, it's the background of liberation. In Sanskrit it is Siddhi Bhumi. One could also say it is the foundation for the liberation. It is that which the liberation is built on. Now, you can look at the word background in different ways. Background can also mean something which is out of the importance. But that's not the meaning here. You can look at the background like the background scenery. Generally, one thinks of it as something not very important also. It is just there for decoration. But background can also be seen as that which everything is resting on. Visually, let's say you have some object right before you. That object is resting visually on the background of the forms which are behind it. Therefore, the background supports that object, because nothing can exist in nothingness. Without the background, that object will not be available for vision. Therefore, although one may say the background is just scenery, it's essential scenery to maintain that which you think is important. So, there are different forms of background. Just like there is a background also to the material world. The Purusha avatars, who, although not seen, are sustaining everything, holding it up. That is also a form of background. You can't see it. It's behind the scene. But it is essential. The Sankhya philosophy, which is the background for liberation, is the basis upon which the liberation may be attained. For you cannot know the process of liberation unless one understands this background of Sankhya. One has to know what is the material world, what is the spiritual world, what is the mode of nature, how is one affected by it, how the cycles of birth and death and old age and disease are within that. It is essential to know. I can open the window. It is essential to know. Otherwise, how can you be liberated if you're not even aware of that which has entangled you? You must know that which has gotten you entangled. Then you can get some way out of it. It's like if you're all captured in something and you don't know what it is. And you throw yourself this way, that way, in order to get out of it. But if that thing is strong and a little bit tricky, even just a little bit tricky, you can't get out. Let's say you are in a straitjacket. In the madhouses, they sometimes put people in this jacket where they wrap your hands behind you on both sides, and then you can just spin around like this and bounce off the walls if you want. Crazy people, they may do like that. So, but let us say you're in a straitjacket and you're not aware of what it is. If you don't know what it is that's got you, how will you ever get out of it? Now you've got to be aware that this thing, there's no way out of it. Therefore, I'd better go to somebody and get him to get me out of it. When one knows like that, then he becomes very humble. So, when we understand in this material world, there's no way out. It's too much entangling. So, we go to somebody. We know, if I take scissors and chop all day, I'll not chop the bondage of the material energy. I'll not be able to get myself out of it. It's too strong. And then, I go then to someone who can do it. I go to the proper physician, who can free me from the entanglement in the heart. Then we go to spiritual master, and we surrender, saying, I can't get out of it. The material world, I'm trapped. I'm entangled. Neither I can even see so much what has entangled me, or a way out. Please help me. So then the spiritual master should deliver knowledge according to the principles of Sankhya philosophy. That means a detailed analysis of the nature of illusion and entanglement. And when that detailed analysis is completed and the disciple understands it fully, well, then he no longer has any excuse to stay in the material world and rot. At that time, he has to very sincerely take up the path and process of surrender. He's got to surrender. He's got to get out of this material entanglement and go back home, back to Godhead. It's required. To surrender, this is the point. Surrender means you give up the entanglement of the material world. You accept Krishna. That's what surrender means. Surrender means you just accept Krishna. If Krishna wants you to act like this, you act like that. That's all. Whatever Krishna wants, you do. Slave. To be the slave of Krishna. Servant. We don't mind being slaves of Krishna. In fact, we quite like it. You know, in the material world, the worst thing is to be a slave. Just do what somebody else says. Then you have no freedom. But we are slaves of the material energy. The material energy is demanding us to act in this way, that way, or the other way. And we have no choice. In fact, we have to develop this slave mentality. Otherwise, how are we going to be freed from the material world? If we're not the slave of some spiritual person, then we'll be the slave of Maya. Either you're surrendered to Krishna or you're surrendered to Maya. How one will get out maintaining independence from Krishna? Because then he'll just be in Maya. Of course, most persons don't like this. They think, what is this? Lose independence? That's impossible. But what independence one has? As far as we've ever seen, no one has any independence. As soon as one declares his independence from Krishna, Maya captures him and forces him into various activities he doesn't like. So then, what kind of independence we have? We have no independence. Our whole business is simply just to wander after the activities or desires of the nose, the tongue, the ears, the eyes. The tongue wants to eat, the belly wants to be filled up, and the genital wishes to act. And where's the freedom? Do you think that if somebody is in any different position in the material world, he's any less affected by these things? Anyone who's not surrendered to Krishna is affected, pushed by these things. Therefore, we have to learn how to surrender. We've heard much about surrender. But the real principle of surrender is to act for the sake and satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's real surrender. Real surrender means you do what Krishna wants done. That may manifest through the instruction of the spiritual master if he's there, or if he's not there, his instruction is still there. And also, one knows, it becomes obvious what Krishna wants. And we should follow it. Krishna wants us to surrender to him. It's the whole point of Bhagavad Gita. All these instructions in Srimad Bhagavatam are just made for us to understand. We have to surrender to Krishna. That's all. So let us be sincere. Let us try and serve the Lord with love and devotion. Let us surrender to Krishna. Otherwise, we'll simply be suffering in so many different ways. Nobody likes that, and yet we do it anyway. That is illusion. Nobody likes to suffer, but we do it anyway, because we are an illusion. So let us finally give up all these attachments to the material world and surrender to the Supreme and get out of illusion. This is the whole point. All right, Hare Krishna.
Language to Harikesa.